So you ever get your house broken into and you feel like vulnerable and like really paranoid after that, or maybe get your identity stolen? And the same thing applies. You feel really paranoid and kind of like just creeped out in general. Like you're really, really on edge. If this video accomplishes what I hope it accomplishes, then you'll feel that way by the end of this video. So that's kind of the goal. So stick around. And then by the end, I'll explain like countermeasures. So hopefully you don't actually leave feeling freaked out, but I want you to have kind of an understanding of acoustic side channel attacks in general, because I think it's important. So we'll start off with a comparison, right? Like a scenario. So imagine someone steals your credit card number without like ever touching your computer or your credit card or anything like that, right? Like they never actually hack your network or exploit any vulnerability that exists that you have that's software related. Instead, they simply listen to sounds your device makes while processing information. Yeah. So that's like, welcome to the world of acoustic side channel attacks, my friend, where hackers or adversaries can extract sensitive data just by analyzing the sounds that electronic devices actually produce during their normal operation. So think about typing your PIN, right? Like in an ATM machine. Each button produces a very distinct beep, just like on a telephone. They all have like different frequencies, right? So when you press these buttons, they make these sounds. And while these beeps might sound a lot alike to our ears, each one is actually really, really distinct and slightly different acoustically. So someone could record those beeps and analyze their actual unique characteristics and reconstruct your PIN number without traditional hacking techniques. And your devices are producing these information-rich sounds constantly, right? Like at this very moment, your laptop fan, for example, changes speed in patterns that reveal what your processor is actually calculating, right? Like how hard it's working. Your keyboard creates unique acoustic signatures for every single key that's pressed. Like the space key sounds different than the enter key, sounds different than the escape key, right? So like even the electronic circuits though, inside your phone actually emit tiny vibrations that carry information about their operations. And with the right equipment and the knowledge, a adversary could capture and decode these sounds to extract things like passwords, encryption keys, and other kinds of sensitive data simply by listening to the acoustic emissions from your device that naturally gets produced. So let's look at like how electronic devices actually make sound on a really basic kind of fundamental way. So one of the fundamental principles that most people never actually learn about when it comes to things like electronics is that when electricity flows through any material, it creates a physical vibration at the molecular level. Like this is really just basic physics that can't be prevented or eliminated altogether. Like every single electronic component in your computer basically vibrates when electricity current passes through it. And these vibrations disturb the surrounding air molecules. I told you, you're gonna be paranoid by the end of this, but they disturb the surrounding air molecules and they create pressure waves. So it's the kind of the best way I can describe it, that propagate outward as sound, if that makes sense. So like some of these sounds fall within the human hearing like range, like the whirl of like a cooling fan, for example, right? While a lot of them actually exist at frequencies or volumes below our actual perception threshold. And like I'm half deaf, so way below my perception threshold. I can't hear in this ear. So there's anyways, side issue. The critical insight here though is that the different computational operations create very distinct vibrational patterns, right? And when your computer calculates, for example, like your tax return, the processor executes one specific sequence of operations that creates one acoustic pattern. And when it encrypts your banking password, it performs a different calculation that produces a entirely different acoustic signature altogether. Opening your email creates yet another unique pattern sound that is distinguishable on like that small level. So think of it like the old dial-up internet modems from like the 1990s. If you're that old, remember like those the strange like screeching sounds and buzzing sounds that were emitted when you were actually connecting. Like that was literally digital data being converted into acoustic signals for transmission over your phone lines. Like your modern devices are doing basically the same thing. They're converting their digital operations into physical vibrations and sounds, just at like much lower volumes and really kind of different frequencies. The difference is that quiet doesn't mean silent, right? Like, and it certainly doesn't mean secure from acoustic surveillance. Oh yeah, that's a thing. It's a thing. And the science behind sound-based hacking, basically, is sound waves, right? And they aren't just random noise that fills the air that's around. They actually contain structured patterns that encode information about their actual source. And these patterns can be captured and analyzed and decoded to actually reveal some really surprising details, like when you actually look at it. So consider how your voice, for example, works as an analogy. When you say the word hello, your vocal cords vibrate in a pretty specific pattern that creates a unique sound wave. And when you say goodbye, that pattern is obviously completely different. And a person listening can decode these patterns to understand the actual words. So electronic devices operate on that same kind of principle, where every computational action produces its own like distinctive acoustic fingerprint, right? I hope my analogies don't suck here. Like the frightening development really though is like how sophisticated recording equipment has actually become nowadays. So professional grade microphones, right, consisting of just a few $100s can now detect vibrations so minute that you would need like laboratory grade instruments and equipment to actually observe them through any other method. And once these nearly like imperceivable sounds are actually captured, modern computer analysis can actually identify patterns that would be completely invisible to human perception. And machine learning has revolutionized acoustic attack capabilities. Like researchers can train neural networks on thousands of different keyboard recordings and male, female keyboard production ears and types and all that stuff, teaching the algorithm that this specific sound pattern actually means someone hit the letter A on whatever kind of keyboard, whether it's a man or woman. Now, once you feed this trained system a new recording of someone typing, for example, it can reconstruct the entire documents with pretty scary accuracy, basically. And what we're describing is essentially superhuman hearing capability combined with perfect memory, right? Infinite patience and the ability to actually detect patterns across massive data sets, right? And these are capabilities that acoustic attackers can now deploy against your devices. Common attack methods, for example, would be like keyboard sound analysis. So let's look at one of the most accessible acoustic attacks that are actually around. And we'd check this out in detail. So your keyboard, to you, obviously could seem just like a I/O device, right? Like an input device, but it's actually broadcasting every character that you actually type through sound. Every key on your keyboard produces a subtly different sound, acoustic signature, if you will, when pressed. And the spacebar at the bottom of the keyboard, like I was talking about earlier, creates a different vibration than the Q key or the ones at the top or whatever. That the manufacturing company put in there, right? Like, and there's all the other manufacturing variations that exist as well. And how the keyboard is actually positioned on your desk can also affect it. So it's like, here's how an actual attack unfolds, though. An attacker first needs to record your typing, which they might accomplish through a ton of different means, including just a phone call to you while you're busy. Like, they can compromise your video conferencing software, for example, to access the microphone during calls. They might hide a small recording device in your office. Sometimes even a smartphone sitting innocently on your desk can serve as a recording device, especially if it's running something like malicious software. Now, once they have the recording, they can feed it to their trained machine learning model, and this AI system analyzes each keystroke, comparing it against its training data to determine which key produced which sound. And through this analysis, the system actually reconstructs everything you typed during the recorded period. The accuracy rates achieved in things like academic research are genuinely kind of scary. Like, recent studies have actually demonstrated that reconstruction accuracy exceeds 95% when recordings from across the room take place. Some experiments have successfully captured keystrokes through closed doors or from neighboring offices. Like, think about that. You could mail someone a package, have it express, have the phone running, have an extra battery pack in there, and it's recording everything as it goes through. It sits in an office, might sit there for a couple hours. What information are they able to ascertain from that just sitting there? I mean, obviously, when you open the package, you find a phone. It's going to be weird, but whatever. They've already gotten the information they need. Side issue, like professional mechanical keyboards, ironically, are favored by security-conscious users and often produce louder and more distinctive sounds that make these attacks even easier. So then let's pivot and we'll go to like computer fan attacks. Yeah, I know. This attack method, granted, it absolutely sounds like something from a spy movie, but it's been repeatedly demonstrated in real laboratory conditions. Your computer's processor generates heat proportional to its computer load, right? And when the processor works harder, it produces more heat. Makes sense. Causing the cooling fan to spin faster. And you got people like, oh, what if I have water cooling? Yeah, okay. Like, let's keep it simple though for now, right? We can get into that at another time. But like, when computational demands decrease, the processor cools down and the fan slows down accordingly. Now, the key insight that makes this attack actually possible is that cryptographic operations like encryption and decryption involve very specific mathematical calculations. These calculations cause the processor to work in pretty predictable, alternating patterns between intensive computation and brief pauses. I hope that makes sense. I might have just did a word salad, but I think we're good. Like, think of it like very kind of specific rhythm, or a heartbeat, I guess would be a great one, that corresponds to the particular cryptographic operation actually being performed, right? So the cooling fan faithfully follows this computational heartbeat, speeding up, slowing down, kind of in perfect synchronization with the processor's work pattern and workload. So by recording the fan noise and analyzing how much pitch changes over time, attackers can, in a way, kind of like reverse engineer the computational patterns and workload. Now, with sufficient enough analysis, they can actually extract cryptographic keys being used for encryption. So to understand how this works, like, imagine trying to crack a safe combination by listening to someone exercising, right? When they grunt with more effort, they might be lifting heavier weights, which could obviously correspond to higher numbers in a combination. When their breathing is easier, they might be at a lower number. While this analogy is obviously very simple, it captures kind of the essence of how fan noise can leak information about the computational effort that's actually required for different parts of the encryption key. Researchers have successfully demonstrated extracting a 2048-bit RSA keys and 384-bit ECDSA keys using this method. There are studies that say it's not theoretical, that they have done it. So it's not theoretical, but I feel like it's theoretical, if that makes sense. Anyways, now what they claimed is that this often only required a few minutes of fan noise to actually get that enough information to actually make that determination, which is insane, right? Like the attack works best in quiet environments, but it's been proven effective even with moderate background noise. We have keyboard noise, fan noise. What else makes noise? How about hard drives, right? So traditional hard drive sounds, right? They're mechanical hard drives. They operate kind of like high-tech record players with spinning magnetic platters, and they read and write and it moves across the surface to access data. This mechanical operation, again, creates another rich acoustic environment, which is full of goodies, full of your information about things like disk activity. So different files are stored in different physical locations on the actual disk platters. And when your computer needs to, say, open a file, the read-write head must physically move to that location, creating a specific pattern of mechanical sounds. The sequence might be click, click, whirl, right? Whatever. You get my point, right? I might look like an idiot, but now at least you understand. So, but it might be that particular click, click, whirl for that particular file. But I don't know, like whirl, click, click, whirl for another file stored in a different location. Now, each file access creates its own unique acoustic signature based on the physical distance and the distance that the head must actually travel and the sectors it must read. By recording and analyzing these mechanical sounds, attackers can determine which files you're accessing, what programs you're running, or what even database queries that you're actually executing. And the technique is sophisticated enough to distinguish between like opening different documents, accessing different parts of a database, or running different applications. It's comparable to being able to determine which book someone is actually reading by carefully listening to the sound of pages turning, where each book's unique thickness of paper, paper quality, and binding create distinctive acoustic patterns. Like even solid-state drives, which have no moving parts and were once considered immune to acoustic attacks, have been proven vulnerable. While SSDs don't actually produce the obvious mechanical sounds, they do generate electromagnetic interference that basically can then couple with nearby components to produce faint acoustic emissions. Like these sounds are obviously much, much quieter than mechanical drives, but they still leak information about data across patterns when records are opened or accessed with sensitive equipment. So that's insane, but let's move on and we'll look at another one, which is electronic component whine. And deep inside of every electronic device, right, there are components like capacitors and inductors and transformers, and all of them physically vibrate when electric current flows through them, like we were talking about at the beginning. These vibrations often occur at frequencies above human hearing or at volumes below our perception threshold, but they contain valuable information about the device's operations. Different computational tasks cause different patterns of electrical current flow, which in turn create different vibrational frequencies in these specific components. Now, the phenomenon is similar to how a guitar string basically produces different notes depending on how it's plucked and where it's held. Your computer's components are essentially playing a inaudible song that describes exactly what calculations they're performing. And many users have experienced this phenomenon directly through what they call coil whine in graphics cards. Gamers often complain about high-pitched sounds coming out of their GPUs when their GPU is under heavy load. But what they're actually hearing is their graphical card basically inadvertently broadcasting information about its computational load through acoustic emissions. Researchers have basically demonstrated that by analyzing these sounds in detail, they can determine what specific calculations the GPU is actually performing and when, and potentially, obviously, revealing sensitive information about the rendered content or processed data. And the attack becomes particularly powerful when targeting things like cryptographic operations. Different encryption algorithms create distinct electronical patterns that translate into unique acoustic signatures, basically. And by recording and analyzing component whine during encryption operations, attackers can potentially identify which algorithm is being used and even extract key material in some cases. After the first one, you kind of guess the other ones because you've heard them before. You probably heard your GPU whine, you've heard your fan go before, keyboard, right? All kind of obvious ones. But like, what are some advanced attack scenarios, right? So let's get into like smartphone vulnerabilities. Like your smartphone represents a pretty perfect storm of acoustic vulnerabilities. Modern phones contain multiple really high quality microphones that are designed to capture sound from various directions. They're equipped with powerful processors that are capable of real-time audio analysis. And most critically, users routinely grant microphone permissions to dozens of applications without considering the security implications. I'm sure you will now, right? But a single malicious application with microphone access, right, now all of a sudden transforms your phone into a really dangerous and sophisticated acoustic spy device. And this basically compromised phone can record not just like your conversations, whatever, who cares about that, but like all the acoustic emissions from nearby devices. So place your phone on the same desk where your keyboard is. Great. While you're working, even better. Like you've inadvertently provided attackers with a front row acoustic access to every keystroke that you type. Like who needs a keylogger? Who needs malware at that point for PCs or whatever? You just leave it near your computer and it'll capture fan patterns, hard drive sounds potentially, and component whine. And the threat extends beyond just a like simple recording, right? Like smartphones can produce and detect ultrasonic frequencies too, above the hearing range of the human ear, which is typically in the 18 to 22 kilohertz range. Attackers have developed sophisticated systems that use these inaudible sounds for things like tracking and data exfiltration. For example, in an advertisement playing on your smart TV, it might emit an ultrasonic beacon that your phone's microphone detects, linking your TV viewing habits to your mobile identity without your actual knowledge. Cross-device tracking through ultrasonics has been documented in real-world advertising, by the way. It's not just like something I'm making up, but it's been actually documented in like real-world advertising, like in networks. Anyways, retail stores use stuff like ultrasonic beacons to track customer movements. Malicious actors or threat adversaries can exploit the same technology to create things like covert communication channels between infected devices and coordinate attacks or exfiltrate data from air-gapped systems, right? Like air-gapped systems are like air-gapped computers that are physically isolated, right? From all networks with no internet connection, no Wi-Fi capability, and no physical network capabilities. Like organizations use air gapping for their like most exclusive and serious kind of sensitive information, believing that physical isolation provides the perfect security. Well, now we know, right? Acoustic attacks kind of shatter that illusion of perfect isolation. And this is why I said you're going to get really paranoid. Researchers have developed multiple methods for extracting data from air-gapped systems using acoustic channels. The most elegant involves malware that actually manipulates cooling fan speeds, basically, to encode data by speeding up and slowing down the fan in specific patterns. And the malware can transmit binary data through acoustic signals. It's essentially technological Morse code, I guess you'd say, right? Transmitted through fan noise. And the data rates, like, obviously, like watching YouTube with this stuff, right? But like the data rates are going to be modest, but they're going to be sufficient enough for stealing encryption keys, passwords, small documents. Like researchers have actually achieved transmission rates using fan noise alone. An attacker basically needs only to place a smartphone or small recording device within the acoustic range of the target system. The recording device can be hidden in the same room, placed in an adjacent office, or in a package in that room, or like even operated from outside in some cases, right? If Windows allow sound transmission, basically. And other acoustic exfiltration methods from air-gapped systems include manipulating things like hard drive patterns, kind of like what we were talking about before, to create specific sound sequences using the computer's built-in speaker to generate ultrasonic signals, or even modulating the sounds of capacitor, whine to do things like carry data. Each method offers different trade-offs between data rate transmission, distance, and detectability. Like understanding the effective range of acoustic attacks obviously is going to help in developing appropriate defenses for them. Most keyboard acoustic attacks work reliably within 10 to 20 feet of the target device under typical conditions. And typical is kind of a dangerous assumption I don't like to go with, but in security planning, researchers have successfully demonstrated keyboard sounds reconstructed from recordings made in adjacent rooms through things like ventilation systems, and even from outside the building through things like windows. In one experiment that's kind of notable, researchers actually reconstructed typed text from a recording made with a smartphone placed in a bag on the floor of a conference room that was over 15 feet from the target. Anyways, high quality directional microphones can extend that effectiveness even further, right? Potentially capturing usable keyboard sounds from across large open offices. Environmental factors significantly impact acoustic attack effectiveness as well. Background noise basically provides some natural protection, as it makes isolating target sounds a bit more challenging. Like a busy coffee shop offers more acoustic cover than, say, a quiet house, right? Working in a city, trying to eavesdrop on someone working in a city or in a busy office would be more challenging than someone being in a quiet countryside house working remote from home with no music playing. So, however, the modern signal processing techniques can filter out steady background noise, and machine learning models can be trained to work in noisy environments. So you're kind of screwed no matter what. But building construction also affects sound propagation in pretty complex ways. Like glass windows obviously act as kind of acoustic membranes that vibrate with sound waves, potentially allowing things like laser microphones to read indoor sounds from hundreds of feet away. I always thought the whole laser sound thing, when I was a kid, I was reading popular science, problem mechanics. I always thought that was a myth. I always thought it was a scam. Nope. So thin walls, obviously, most of us at one point have been in a cheap apartment, and thin walls, common in modern construction, transmit sound real easily, while thick concrete provides much better isolation. Obviously, hard surfaces reflect sound, potentially carrying acoustic information around corners. If you've ever done time being in a prison, absolutely. It's constant. Things like furnishings, right? Like these pads behind me also absorb it, right? So what are some of the actual tools that are needed, right? Well, there's a growing number of tools, acoustic attack tools, that basically represent a growing security concern, right? Professional audio equipment that once cost thousands of dollars is now available for a couple hundred. And the specific equipment needed varies by attack type, but basic acoustic attack kit is pretty affordable. Like high quality USB microphones that are designed for podcasting can capture their suitable sounds needed for things like obviously keyboard acoustic analysis, but even a crappy cell phone would do that. Models costing under $200 offer frequency responses and sensitivity specifications, basically, that would have required professional studio equipment just a decade ago. Parabolic microphones for long-range recordings are available online for like under $500. You can find them through solid surfaces for like less than $50. Software-defined radio devices also enable attacks to basically detect electromagnetic emissions that basically couple into acoustic signals. Popular SDR platforms cost between $20 and like $300, depending on the frequency range and the sensitivity, like requirements that you actually have. So these devices can detect electromagnetic interference from electronic components that manifest as acoustic emissions. The analysis software required for acoustic attacks is, predominantly open source and, freely available. Machine learning frameworks like TensorFlow and PyTorch provide the tools that you actually need to build keyboard acoustic recognition systems. Audio processing libraries handle signal filtering and frequency analysis. Like, are we just screwed? Like, is there nothing that we can do? There are some defense strategies that are physical defense strategies that operate as countermeasures that are effective against acoustic attacks. And it begins with understanding that sound is a physical phenomenon that follows a predictable rule. Sound-absorbing material can dramatically reduce acoustic leakage from sensitive areas. Professional acoustic panels designed for recording studios work well, but like even simple solutions like heavy curtains or carpeting or upholstered furniture also help absorb sound energy. These panels that you see behind me were really cheap. They're like $1 each, or maybe even 50 cents each. I think I got them on Amazon. White noise generators are always fun. They create basically acoustic masking that makes it much, much harder to isolate device sounds from background noise. Like I saw an interview one time where they're talking to this NSA agent, and he's talking about how when you walk through the hallway at the NSA, they have this white noise, and then they talk about brown noise and pink noise. It gets really nuts, but it played constantly. Now, the key is using things like pink or brown noise rather than pure white noise, as these lower frequency weighted sounds better mask the typical frequency ranges of device emissions. Position these generators strategically between potential recording locations and stuff like sensitive devices. Some organizations install permanent sound masking systems, like the NSA in the hallways of the speakers, that provide consistent acoustic cover throughout sensitive areas. Physical distance remains one of the most effective distances. Even doubling the distance reduces sound intensity by like 6 decibels. Arranging offices so that sensitive systems are far from publicly accessible areas, exterior windows, and stuff like shared walls provides real meaningful protection. While processing highly sensitive information, you should consider something like using interior rooms without windows or exterior walls, having be thick walls. Like, traditional physical security measures gain a new importance in the context of these kind of acoustic attacks that we're talking about. So regular sweeps for recording devices, obviously, restricted access to things like near sensitive systems and visitor management all help prevent attackers from doing things like positioning recording equipment effectively. Packages should be kept in a isolated area, for example. So someone sends a phone, right? Like the attack vector we were talking about before. Technical solutions that are kind of software-based also exist as defenses against acoustic attacks, but those are also evolving rapidly, just like the attack vectors, right? Modern operating systems can implement fan speed randomization that actually disrupts the pattern attacks that attackers rely on for cryptographic key extraction. Some security software adds random computational delays during sensitive operations to prevent timing-based acoustic analysis. And hardware manufacturers are beginning to address things like acoustic security in their designs. Newer keyboard designs use dampening materials to more uniform key mechanisms to reduce acoustic variation between the keys. Some high security systems use keyboards that are filled with foam or use gel to actually muffle the keystrokes. And mechanical keyboards with O-ring dampeners can reduce acoustic emissions while also maintaining tactile feedback, which you kind of need if that's what you've been doing your whole life. Like component level shielding also does stuff like reduces the actual electromagnetic emissions that can couple into acoustic signals. So better power supply designs with improved filtering also reduce things like coil whine. Some security systems use specifically designed cases with acoustic dampening materials that muffle all internal sounds. And these cases often include sealed designs that also provide things like electromagnetic shielding. Now, detection systems can do things like alert security teams to potential acoustic surveillance. Ultrasonic detectors can identify covert communication attempts above human hearing range. Acoustic anomaly detection systems use machine learning to identify unusual sound patterns that might indicate recording devices or acoustic data exfiltration. Some advanced systems can even detect the presence of my favorite, because it's super nerdy, laser microphones by identifying the infrared beams that they actually use. So this brings us to an interesting question of like, who actually uses these attacks, right? Like, who is it, Sam, that's going to be using laser microphones against me? Who is it, Sam, that's going to be listening to my fan speeds and hard drive speeds? And, well, actually a lot of people, right? Threat actors, for one. Nation state intelligence agencies, for another, have most likely employed acoustic attack techniques for decades, like long before the public actually knew about them. Now, it's only thanks to things like research that's brought these methods to light. Like these agencies have absolutely developed resources for custom recording equipment and the expertise to analyze complex acoustic signals and the operational capability to position these recording devices near things like high-value targets that they have in mind that they want to spy on. Now, for intelligence agencies, acoustic attacks offer the kind of perfect combination of passive collection, difficult to actually prove that they're the ones who sent it, and the ability to bypass like strong encryption. Corporate espionage, which is, by the way, billion-dollar industry, also is another fairly significant threat vector for things like acoustic attacks. Industrial spies can use acoustic techniques to steal trade secrets during business meetings, capture passwords during video conferences, or monitor competitor activities. Like the passive nature of acoustic recording makes it ideal for things like long-term intelligence gathering in corporate environments. A single compromised smartphone in a boardroom could provide months of valuable intelligence or millions or possibly even billions of dollars in information. Like sophisticated criminal organizations are beginning to adapt acoustic attack techniques as traditional digital attacks become more and more difficult. So as organizations improve their network security by doing things like implementing strong encryption and training employees to recognize phishing attempts and criminals seek alternate attack vectors, acoustic attacks provide a way to bypass many traditional security measures, potentially capturing passwords and sensitive data, despite strong digital defenses that are already in place, right? And so, like, security researchers kind of continue to advance in this field through things like reasonable disclosure, which is awesome because it allows me to do things like talk to you about this. But now, academic institutions and corporate research labs regularly publish papers that detail these kind of novel acoustic vulnerabilities and attack techniques, which, again, like no doubt, like they definitely sound like they come from a spy movie, but they don't. This research aims basically to improve security by identifying vulnerabilities. It also provides a roadmap for malicious actors and threat actors to develop their own acoustic attack capabilities, unfortunately. But that's just the world we're in. And target selection, high-value individuals, make prime targets for acoustic surveillance due to the focused nature of these attacks, like CEOs typing passwords or discussing confidential strategies, or government officials, for example, handling classified information, and celebrities providing private communications. All kind of represent really valuable targets where the effort of acoustic surveillance actually pays off in the end. Like, the targeted nature of acoustic attacks makes them more suitable for focused operations rather than stuff like mass deployment, right? Government facilities and corporate headquarters often implement sophisticated digital security, but overlook stuff for things like acoustic attacks. Many secure facilities were designed and built before acoustic attacks were well understood, leaving them vulnerable to these techniques. Sensitive areas like situations rooms and executive offices and secure communication facilities require special attention to specifically do things like acoustic security. Obviously, there are a ton of places that have accounted for this. I'm not saying that they haven't. I'm saying that in general, a lot of places haven't, right? Like, critical infrastructure especially faces unique challenges from stuff like acoustic attacks because the industrial control systems often rely on stuff like older equipment that provides distinct acoustic signatures. Power generation facilities, for example, water treatment plants, manufacturing systems, and transportation are all great examples of things that rely on mechanical systems to create and run, that create information-rich acoustic environments. And these sounds might reveal operational schedules, equipment status, or processing parameters that could be valuable for planning physical or cyber attacks. So, I mean, all this brings us to like the future of acoustic security. Like, where are we going to be in 20 years? Well, I would point out that some of the emerging threats, like artificial intelligence, really continues to kind of revolutionize the threat landscape. Acoustic attack capabilities with each passing year evolve. Like, deep learning models become increasingly sophisticated at isolating signals from noise, recognizing subtle patterns in acoustic data, and reconstructing information from very minimal input. And current research explores using things like generative AI in order to enhance poor quality recordings, potentially making previously unusable acoustic data valuable for attacks now. And miniaturization of recording devices proceeds rapidly with MEMS microphones becoming smaller and more sensitive and more power efficient. Researchers have developed recording devices smaller than a grain of rice that can operate for weeks on tiny, tiny batteries. Like, these devices can be hidden almost anywhere, making physical detection increasingly difficult, to say the least, if not impossible. Smart dust concepts propose microscopic recording devices that could be dispersed like powder, creating a pervasive acoustic surveillance network. And new attack vectors emerge regularly as researchers explore previously totally unconsidered acoustic channels. Recently, discoveries including extracting data from the sound of 3D printers to reconstruct printed objects, using monitor brightness variations to create acoustic signals through coil whine, and determining GPS coordinates from acoustic signatures of power grid interference. Basically, like, each new discovery expands the attack surface that security professionals have to know about and have to defend. So defense evolution is another topic that's worth talking about. The security industry basically responds to acoustic threats with increasingly sophisticated countermeasures. Acoustic security assessments are becoming standard practice. High security facilities, for example, using the same tools and techniques as attackers to identify vulnerabilities before they can be exploited. Security standards are beginning to include things like acoustic considerations, requiring organizations to address these threats in their security planning. Manufacturing tends to show increased awareness of things like acoustic security too. Future devices may also include built-in acoustic countermeasures, such as active noise cancellation, specifically designed to mask information-bearing sounds. Right? Randomized acoustic signatures that change with each device to prevent training effective recognition models, and acoustic isolation built into component design from the ground up. So then we get to education and awareness representation. Now, as more security professionals understand acoustic threats, they can better defend against them. Training programs increasingly include things like acoustic security modules, teaching IT staff to recognize things like vulnerable configurations and implement appropriate countermeasures. User awareness helps too, as employees who understand that their devices leak acoustic information are more likely to follow security procedures designed to mitigate those specific kind of risks. Some practical takeaways that I would say I found useful were like your devices are constantly generating acoustic emissions that contain information about their operations and your data. Every keystroke you type, every kind of calculation that your processor performs, every file your hard drive accesses, produces these like unique sounds that could potentially be captured and analyzed by an attacker. And like in our kind of modern world of ubiquitous microphones and powerful analysis tools, these acoustic emissions represent a real present threat and risk. Like the traditional kind of separation between physical security and digital security kind of no longer exists in any meaningful way with this attack vector. The acoustic environment of your workspace kind of directly impacts your information security, right? Like background noise levels, like wall construction, window placement, and like the proximity of potential recording devices all affect your vulnerability to acoustic attacks in general. So security planning has to consider those physical factors, right? Alongside traditional digital concerns. Like simple precautions can significantly reduce your acoustic attack surface without necessarily requiring crazy expensive modifications. These things were an example of that. Like using white noise generators or pink noise generators when handling sensitive information, which are really cheap. You can get those on Amazon too, or just get white noise on your phone and play it. You can do that too. But it allows you to do things like if you're going to handle sensitive data, will provide some acoustic masking. That makes attacks more difficult if you think that your threat model requires it, right? And being aware of your environment during important calls when typing passwords definitely helps your kind of identify potential recording threats that may exist. Positioning sensitive systems away from windows and public areas obviously reduces opportunity for acoustic surveillance and visual surveillance, by the way. Understanding that air-gapped systems are not perfectly isolated helps you implement appropriate additions in terms of protections. Knowledge absolutely remains your most powerful defense, which is why I'm doing this crazy long video. Basically, data exists not just in digital form, but also in physical phenomenon. Like our devices create and make sounds that create signatures. And as our world fills with more and more powerful devices and more sensitive microphones, the acoustic environment, like those threats are not going away. It becomes an increasingly rich source of potential information gathering. And protecting against these attacks requires expanding our security thinking, like beyond firewalls and passwords, but to include the physical properties of like sound itself. Like the devices around us are always talking. And in the world of acoustic security, someone is always listening. Thank you for watching to the end. If you like this video, you found out some use out of it, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.